I welcome you all to the module 8 of this course. So, the module 8 is about cognitive and social cognitive perspective, and today we are going to have lecture number 18 overall, and this is the third lecture of this module. So, today we will be discussing mini cognitive theories of personality. That means, we will be talking about few mini theories which are small concepts which are not full fledged theories, that not like full fledged theories that we discussed earlier, but they are small concepts, but which also contributes to the understanding of human personalities. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture, that is lecture number 17. So, in the last lecture we talked about Albert Bandura's social learning theory or social cognitive theory. There we discussed the basic concept of reciprocal determinism that was proposed by Bandura, which talks about that environmental, personality and behavioral factors all interact with each other, all in a dynamic fashion in our life. So, there is not just environmental factor or personal factors, there could be the behavior of the person itself can also come into the equation. So, all these three factors kind of interact with each other and that give rise to various outcomes in our life. So, we discussed in detail about the concept of reciprocal determinism. We also talked about the concept of personal, proxy and collective agency, which basically talks about there are many behaviors which comes from the personal intentions, or typically comes from the free will of the person. Those behaviors comes under the personal agency. There are certain behaviors which we take help from other individuals. So, these are when we engage in those kind of behaviors by taking help of other individuals, they are called as a proxy agency. And collective agency, basically when collectively as a group of people we try to engage in certain behavior and produce certain outcomes, that becomes collective agency. We also discussed in details about the concept of observational learning or modeling. We discussed various factors involved in it and the various the dynamics involved in observational learning. In detail we have discussed all these things, and at the end we discussed the concept of self-efficacy, and we also tried to understand what is the importance of self-efficacy. We also talked about what are the various sources of self-efficacy and what are the practical implications of this understanding. So, these are some of the things that we discussed in the last lecture. So, today we will be talking about some of the mini cognitive theories. In that we will be focusing on Julian Rotter's locus of control, the concept of locus of control and how it contributes to understanding of personality. We will be talking about the concept of learned helplessness and how it is related to personality, and we will be talking about explanatory style as a personality variable. So, these are some of the mini concepts or theories within the cognitive theories that we will be talking about in today's lecture. So, let us start today's lecture. So, we will start with the concept of Rotter's locus of control. So, Julian Rotter, whose photograph is given here, introduced this concept of locus of control in 1966, which basically talks about, it is a kind of personality trait or dimension that describes how much people believe they control the events in their life. So, basically locus of control captures the essence or idea or our belief system, that to what extent we believe that we are able to control the events in our life, to what extent we are the agency for controlling events, or to what extent we think that outside factors control the outcome of an action or of an event. So, that belief is basically the locus of control. So, where is the sense of control? Is it within you or is it outside of you? So, that is called locus of control. So, we will be talking about both internal and external aspect in just upcoming slides. So, locus of control is very important research tool in terms of understanding personality dimension, just like the concept of self-efficacy that we discussed in the last lecture. Lot of studies have been conducted on it, and they try to understand the application of it in the real life context. So, similar to Bandura, Rotter also believed that animal studies are too simplistic to fully understand the complexity of human behavior. So, a lot of these theories that evolved out of animal research, obviously then they have been extended to human understanding, but when we talk about animal behavior, it is much more simple behavior. We do not have much complexities involved in animal behavior, But when you talk about human behavior, a lot of complexities are involved in it. So, that is what Rotter's believe, just like Albert Bandura that we discussed in the last lecture. So, one of the major concept within this idea of locus of control will be kind of slowly going there, but one of the basic idea that is linked to the idea of locus of control is called expectancies of the person. So, that is basically the idea of there are two aspects of expectancies. So, Rotter in 1975 suggested that individual can form two types of expectancies or expectations about the outcomes of their behavior. One is called specific expectancies, and another is called as generalized expectancies. So, specific expectancies basically talks about individual's judgment of the likelihood that a behavior will lead to a particular outcome within a particular situation. So, basically it is an expectation. What are your expectation that if you engage in a behavior, what is the probability of X outcome? So, there can be many outcomes of a behavior. We will be giving example. Whenever we engage in a behavior, so there can be many outcomes of that behavior. So, what is your expectation that if you engage in this behavior, X outcome or Y outcome is likely to happen? So, that is your expectancies. Now, when this expectancy is related to very specific situation, then it becomes specific expectancies, but when you have a general expectations which goes to various situations of life, then it becomes a generalized expectancies. So, these expectancies are connected to the concept of locus of control, and this also influences lot of our thought processes, actions and belief system connected to belief system. Now, Rotter in this context, he predicted which option an individual might choose in a situation, what kind of behavior a person will engage in a situation given there are various possible outcomes. He used the term behavior potential, which basically refers to the likelihood of a specific behavior occurring in a particular situation. What is the probability of a particular behavior occurring in a particular situation? So, that is called behavioral potential, behavior potential. What is the possibility that a particular behavior will occur in a particular situation? So, we have lot of expectations about certain behaviors or certain outcomes that is going to happen if I engage in the particular behavior. So, based on that we think about the future course of actions. So, that is called as a behavioral potential. What is the probability that something is going to happen if I engage in a certain behavior? So, based on that we engage in future based on those expectations we engage in further actions in that particular situation. So, that is called as a behavioral potential. So, according to Rotter, the response chosen by an individual in a situation will be the one with the strongest behavioral potential that a particular situation. So, if person has a higher behavioral potential as per his expectation, then he is more likely to engage in that behavior. Now, there are other things involved in it. So, this behavioral potential can be calculated. So, he basically Rotter tried to make it a mathematical formula kind of stuff. So, he says strength of a behavior potential, to what extent the expectations or expectation of a behavior to occur in a situation will depend on two important factors. One is what is the reinforcement value, means reward value into expectancy. Okay. What is the expectation that a behavior is going or outcome is going to come out because of a behavior, and what is the reinforcement value of that outcome, how much value you put on it. These two factors and their product will determine what is the possibility of a behavior happening in a situation. Okay. So, expectancy as we kind of discussed is that our subjective estimates of the likely outcome of a course of a behavior. So, if I engage in a behavior, what is the likely outcome of that behavior? So, that is the expectations, that is called expectancy value. It reflects what we expect will happen based on our experiences of similar situation. Mostly this expectancy comes from our past experiences. If we have engaged in similar situations, similar kind of behavior, that we know what is the likely outcome of that behavior. So, we derive that expectancy from mostly from the past experiences. For instance, for example, in a scenario of a nasty insult, somebody has insulted a person, let us say, or you, the expectancy would be your estimate of what you expect will happen. For example, you mock the person. So, a situation has arisen, somebody has mocked you. or insulted you. Somebody has insulted you. Now, expectancy is basically your estimate that if you revert back to that person, let us say you mock that person, now what is the possible outcome of that situation. So, somebody has insulted you, or let us say you also insult back. So, what is the possible outcome of that situation? So, that is the expectancy, and we develop this expectancy mostly from the past experiences based on our interaction with that person or the similar person. So, if it is related to very specific situation, it is a basically specific expectancy. You might estimate that the person who, let us say if you mock back to that person, the person will blush and feel ashamed of their remark. This may be one possibility, there may be other possibilities, So, based on that you will make which one is more likely to happen if you mock back to that person. Each option will have a different expectancy associated with it, influencing how that person behaves in that situation. Okay? So, we will try to understand using some examples. So, next factor is reinforcement value. So, basically this refers to our preferences among the possible reinforcement available. So, what is the possible reinforcement available or reward available to all these outcomes? Do you prefer those outcomes, whatever will happen if you let us say mock back to that person? So, what is your reinforcement value of this outcome? So, based on that you will decide to go ahead with that action or not. So, that is called, so behavioral potential is a product of reinforcement value and two expectancies. So, let us see by giving some more specific examples. So, we will be seeing this example. So, basically just to summarize that, Rotter proposes that to predict a behavior in a situation, we must understand with what kind of behavior will happen in a situation. To predict that, we need to understand the available options and the possible outcomes associated with each options. What are the possible options available to that person, and whenever a person engages in a one particular option, what is the outcome of that particular option when he chooses that. So, both will decide and will determine the behavior of that person in a particular situation. So, that individual then evaluates the likely outcome of each option expectancy and assesses how much they value these outcomes. So, basically the same formula is kind of explained in different words. The behavior most likely to occur will be the one that receives the highest rating based on this assessment. So, if there is a highest rating, then the most likely behavior is going to happen in that situation. So, let us understand this by an example. So, here is the situation, somebody insulted someone let us say for example, Angela makes a nasty remark about you in front of other people. So, that is the situation. Now, what is the possible behavior of you in that situation? What will happen, what will be the possibility of your behavior in that situation? So, this is the situation, someone named Angela made a nasty remark on you in front of others. Okay. Now, what are the behavioral options you have? One option is that you give an angry reply to that person. Another option is that you make a mocking comment on that person. Another option is that you get upset. Another option is that you say nothing. Another option is that you simply walk away. Okay. These are different possibilities that people can show in this particular situation. Okay. Okay. Now, for each of these behavior, whatever you engaged in, there is a possible outcome. Okay. So, let us say which you can expect, what is the possible outcome of this situation. Everybody has certain expectation, if I do this behavior, what is the likely outcome. So, let us say you give an angry reply to that person, somebody insulted and you also gave an angry reply. Most possible outcome is that there will be an argument in this situation. Okay. So, what is the rating of expectancy? The possibility of argument is very high. So, the expectancy of argument happening is very high. What is the value of this outcome? Let us say you do not like to be in an argumentative situation. So, for you the value or the reinforcement may be very low in a situation where there is an argument happening. Okay. So, it is possible that the value of this outcome is very low for you as a person. It is possible, it depends on other person may have different values. We are giving a hypothetical example. So, outcome of argument is very high in this situation, and you do not have the value of this outcome is very low for you. So, the possible maybe final behavioral potential would be low. So, maybe this behavior will not happen if you let us say the value of this outcome is low for you. So, it is possible you will avoid this situation of argument. The second one is that you make a mocking comment against that nasty remark given by another person. The possible outcome that this person Angela who made a nasty nasty remark about you will feel embarrassed, okay, when you give a mocking comment in reply. So, the possibility is very high, expectancy of this embarrassment is very high, and you also value this. So, you want that person to get embarrassed, you understand. So, the value of this outcome is very high for you. So, both are high, that means then this behavior is very high, likely to happen. So, the behavior potential of this behavior is very high. So, if you give value high to this outcome, that means it is the most possible behavior that is likely to happen for you, okay, because you value that outcome. Okay. Other possibilities, like for example, if you get upset, you think Angela feel remorse, but the probability is very low of feeling remorse. If you get upset, but you are thinking if I get upset, but the probability of that other person is getting remorse or at least feel guilty about it is very low, but you want that very highly, that is you want feel that person to feel remorse or guilty, but you think, so you value this outcome, but the probability or expectations of this outcome is very low. So, probably you will not engage, so overall behavior potential may be low. For other situations similarly, like when you say nothing or walk away, the possible outcome of feeling silly in this situation may be very high, but then for you the value is low. You do not want that person just to feel silly and get away. For you that is not good enough result of this particular action. So, you may not engage in this behavior. So, the probability or potential is very low. So, only in this case for you as a person making a mocking comment against that nasty remark will have the highest potential, and it is most likely to happen in that situation as you, for you, because the behavior potential is very high in this case, because the outcome is very likely to happen and you give high rating to this outcome. So, in all this situation, this particular case is more likely to happen because of your expectancy and reward value of this particular outcome of this behavior. So, this is an example of how people can, what is the possibility of a behavior happening in a situation, you know. So, all this calculation can happen very fast within the mental calculation of person, and based on their past experiences they can choose one particular option in a particular behavior, particular situation. So, these are more like specific expectancies that we can generate from past experiences. In many situations where we may not have any past experiences, then we rely on something called as a generalized expectancies. From similar experiences from the past, some general expectation we have. So, he highlights the importance of this concept, indicating that individual develop belief based on their past learning experiences regarding whether reinforcement is controlled by external forces if the behavior controls reinforcement. So, in many situations we develop from our past experiences certain general expectancies, and based on that we decide or choose to engage in certain behaviors. Rotter was particularly interested in the concept or in the idea whether it makes a difference if individuals believe that the reinforcement they receive is linked to the performance, compared to those who believe the reinforcement is unrelated to their behavior. So, Rotter was, from this particular understanding, he was also extended this idea to understand what happens, what differences happens when a person believes that the reward they receive is linked to their performance. So, whenever they make an action and whatever the result and reward they get out of that action, what is the belief of that person, whether this reward or outcome is happening because of their action, or is it within their control, or something outside of that is controlling that, or is it not related to their behavior, is it simply a random factors coming from the outside. So, what kind of belief system people have, and how does it make difference when you have this kind of beliefs. So, based on this idea, this whole locus of control concept came into the picture. So, this locus of control is one of the central idea of Rotter's theory, and he basically talked about two types of locus of control. One is external and one is internal locus of control of reinforcement. So, individual either possesses generalized expectation that their own action lead to desired outcomes. Whenever you say, whenever you do an actions, it is the you, or the control is coming from within you. You are the one who is controlling the rewards and outcomes of particular action. So, your locus is within you, locus of this particular action is within you. So, you are the one, your action is deciding your reward, your outcomes and everything. So, then it is called as an internal locus of control. So, the control is within the person, or when they believe that the external factors such as chance, luck, power of other people determine whether a desired outcomes happens, then it becomes external locus of control. When you think certain outcomes in your life actually depends on external factor, it is not within you, it comes from let us say chance or luck, or someone outside very powerful will control this, something like that. So, your control is outside you, what is the outcome of a particular behavior, or what is the possibility of reward is linked to that behavior. So, it will be linked to an external factors. So, that is called as an external locus of control. Now, what happens when people develop a generalized expectancies. So, for most of the situations, some people are internal locus of control. When you based on your experiences, you develop certain patterns of locus of control, that some people are consistently internally locus of control, some people are consistently external locus of control. These are called externals, and those who have consistent internal locus of control, they are called internals. Now, when you have develop a pattern of behavior, then it becomes like a personality trait. For most of the situation, you will feel if you are internal, then you have you control the outcomes of your behavior. So, you will all the time try to control behavior or outcomes of behavior, you will put lot of effort and so on. And some people are consistently externals, that means they believe whatever they do is does not make much difference, it depends on their luck, chance or something outside. Then they are called externals, and then their behavior will also follow accordingly. So, individuals who believe that reinforcement depends on external forces are labeled as externals. Those external forces may include powerful others in the person's life, luck, God, fate, whatever it is. The key characteristics of external is the belief that the locus of control is external to them, their action do not influence their outcome. So, they cannot make much difference. So, that is one group of people called externals, and similarly the internals will follow the opposite trend. Individuals who believe their behavior does make difference, whatever they do, their outcome actually depends on that. So, that those are called internals. Rotter demonstrated that locus of control is a relatively permanent stable characteristics, it becomes kind of personality trait. Some people are internal, some people are externals, because most of the situation their interpretations are like similar. Internal will mostly think about controlling outcomes, externals will mostly kind of think about external factors. Rotter saw locus of control as a stable individual difference variable within the dimensions of external and internal, influencing variety of behavior. So, whether you are an internal or an external will influence lot of actions and consequences in your behavior. So, what is the impact of this locus of control? So, individual with internal locus of control are more likely to achieve achievement orientation, because they perceive that their own behavior can lead to positive outcomes. So, they are more likely to be achievement oriented people, because they will think whatever I do can make differences, and they will put effort, and accordingly they will try to control the results and outcomes of their life. Consequently, they are more likely to be high achievement oriented people. On the other hand, individuals with external locus of control tend to be less independent and more prone to experiencing depression and stress, and because they will always feel they do not have control over things, they will always feel something else, luck, chance or whatever it is, some external person or external can control or make differences. So, because you will always feel dependent on the external factors, you will not feel sense of independence. So, that may also lead to other experiences, and emotional experiences may lead to something similar to stress, high stress, depression symptoms and so on. So, whether your internal external may also influence your emotional consequences of life. Over the past half century, there has been trend towards increasing external locus of control. Some research shows that over the last few decades, there has been increased trend towards increasing external locus of control among young Americans. So, some data shows that external locus of control may be increasing in a lot of population in certain countries like Americans. They believe that their lives are more controlled by external forces than their parents believe at the same age. So, newer generation are becoming more external, some data shows at least in the context of certain countries. Unfortunately, such perceptions are in line with increasing cynicism and depression. So, that may also have emotional consequences like depression and so on. These individuals increasingly attribute their problems to external factors and tend to blame others for their difficulties. So, when you all the time think the controlling factor is outside of you, you are more likely to blame outside factors like other persons or luck or chance or God, whatever it is. When the things does not happen, you will likely to blame those factors. You will not see what is your problem, where you lack, but you will blame it to those factors because you believe they are the one who is controlling it. So, accordingly, the your emotional consequence and all these things will influence. Rotter developed a scale called internal external locus of control scale to measure people locus of control. By using this scale, we can measure whether we are more towards internal or more towards external and so on. So, this was a scale that can be developed, and one can get a score for this internal external locus of control. So, it is a scale with 29 items and so on, and which basically looks at what kind of locus of control people have. Now, there are certain limitations to these views, particularly in certain ideas of this particular approach, that most studies who find differences of individuals with an internal versus external locus of control tend to depict internal in the positive light. So, most of the time there is a trend in the research that shows internal locus of control is some kind of better as compared to external locus of control in terms of life outcomes and so on. However, some researcher kind of makes a cautious attempt in terms of giving understanding that this may be one sided view, which is overly simplistic and fails to look at the complexities of life, because both the orientation may be helpful in certain situations. In certain situations, external locus of control may be appropriate, and certain situation internal locus of control could be more appropriate. So, it is not like black and white kind of one is better than the other and so on. So, depending on the situation, they may have different outcomes. For example, within the internal locus of control or people who are internals, there because of this trait there may be certain negative aspects to their life also, when obviously they have many positive things, but they can also have negative aspects to it when people are too much in the internal locus of control category. For some early study indicate that internals may possess certain negative qualities such as too much of compulsivity in the behavior, who have an excessive concern for order and control, often score high on internal locus of control. So, some people when they are very strictly in the internal locus of control category, they may be highly obsessive and compulsive in terms of controlling the outcome. So, they may become highly obsessed and highly compulsive kind of individual, which may have its negative impact on their life. Some researcher also noted that internal might have an exaggerated need for control, because they have a very strong sense of control of the outcomes of things. Because the internals frequently attribute events to their own action, they may be unjustly blame themselves also for failures beyond their control. Sometimes failure can happen in one's life which are not in your control. So, many times external reasons could be there in your failure, but people with very strict internal locus of control in such situation may start blaming themselves, because they always see the locus is within themselves. which may lead to unnecessary self criticism and problem and emotional issues in certain situations. So, there may be not only the positive things associated with the internals, there may be some negative aspects to it also. On the other hand, similarly there can be positive things to external people with externals. Negative we have already discussed what are the possible negative things. Research suggests that adopting an external perspective can be beneficial in specific situations, particularly situation is one it is beyond one's control. In many situations in our life, it is not in our control. We cannot decide the outcomes of many situations of our life, because there are many factors outside of us, outside of our control, working in many situations in our life. So, in such situation, kind of people with external locus of control or external may be in a much better position. For example, an internal patient facing major heart surgery, somebody who is having very strong internal locus of control, let us say facing major heart surgery, might initially take steps to secure the best care, but ultimately must trust the chosen medical team. Okay? Things like surgery and other thing, ultimately you cannot control the outcome of such issue. Let us say very serious surgery and such kind of things. Even though you may go to the best possible medical teams and hospitals, still you do not know what is the possible outcomes. Anything can happen. In such situation, you cannot control the situation. You have to only trust those peoples and and kind of ultimately you have to trust and make it kind of externally factors to decide the outcomes whatever happens. So, continuing to stress about the outcome can be detrimental. So, in such situation, if you all the time get stressed about the outcomes, because it is useless, you do not have control over that. On the other hand, externals who perceive such situation as out of their control might handle these scenarios by trusting the teams and experiencing less distress. So, in such situation, people with external locus of control may be more relaxed, because they anyway think it is not in their control and so on. So, they may not be very obsessively or compulsive in those situations. So, there can be advantages to both the sides. Idea is to kind of make a healthy balance of both the perspectives depending on the situation. So, healthy individuals are those who learn to balance both the internals and external orientation, adapting their responses based on the situation. Such individuals recognize that it is unrealistic to control every aspect of their environment, yet equally unwise to relinquish control. So, both the extreme is not good, because there are situations where you do not have control, there are situations where you should take control. So, based on that one should kind of healthy mix of both the locus of control is good. But the problem is when people it becomes a personality trait, people generally are not able to mix balance both the case, because they are always biased towards one particular approach, which can happen very automatically. But healthy approach is always kind of balancing both the control, sense of control depending on the situation. So, that flexibility is important to adapt in situations. Now, let us come to the another concept which comes under the mini cognitive theories of personality, that is called as a learned helplessness. So, the concept of learned helplessness evolved out of animal studies. First, it was described by Martin Seligman. So, here is the photo of Martin Seligman, who is also called the father of positive psychology. He proposed this concept of learned helplessness, which kind of they accidentally discovered out of animal research, which is connected to the concept of giving up or avoidance. How people or animals give up in certain situations based on certain past experiences, they learn to become helpless. So, this is not a real helplessness, but it is a learned kind of helplessness. So, we will see what is that. So, the learned helplessness occur after an individual repeatedly experience negative or uncontrollable situation and become passive and unmotivated and stay that way even after the environment changes, so that success is possible. So, learned helplessness basically happens when an individual experiences repeated failures or repeated negative outcomes or repeated negative uncontrollable situation which they could not control. So, this when this happens few times in the past, then the person develops certain mental tendencies to become passive and unmotivated, and in future also they remain like that. Even if a situation changes and you are able, you are more likely to control and get success, you do not even try to get success because of your past conditioning, because you experience failure few times and you developed a sense of passivity and you stay unmotivated. So, in future when another situation arises where success may be possible, similar situation, you do not even try to make any effort. So, that is called as a learned helplessness. So, you have learned to become helpless. So, this is a learned phenomena from your past experiences. So, when a new situation arises where success or control is possible, you do not even try to or make attempt to control or make attempt to succeed in those situations. So, the sense of passiveness arises in that person. So, that is called learned helplessness. So, basically it evolved out of some animal studies. So, learned helplessness was discovered accidentally by Martin Seligman and his colleague Stephen Meyer in 1967. So, they were studying the effects of an inescapable shock upon subsequent escape and avoidance learning in an animal model with the dogs. So, they are doing an experiment with the dog, that what happens when an animal is given inescapable shock. So, basically animal is put in a chamber and below the chamber there is a metal plate. So, through that metal plate certain mild shocks, electric shock can be given to the dog. Now, they did this this experiment with different groups of dogs. One group of dog where they are given inescapable shocks. So, basically they could not stop this electric shock. So, when electric shock is given, they could not do anything because there was no switch, nothing there to kind of remove this shock. So, one group of dog was given escapable shock because they could not stop that. Another group was given, they could escape that because there was a switch which they could press through their nose, and when it is pressed, so they learned to press it and stop, then the shock was stopped like this, and there was a control condition where so there was no shock was given and so on. So, like that they used different groups of dogs. One group was they had to endure this electric shock, they could not do anything, it was beyond their control. Another group, there was a sense of control, they could switch off the electric shock by pressing a particular switch through their nose and so on. So, these groups of dogs, when they were transferred to another kind of shuttle box. So, what is happened in this experiment? Researcher immobilized a dog and exposed to it inescapable electric shock. Basically, they are talking about the experimental group. So, other groups were there where they could control it. When placed in a situation 24 hours later where it could terminate the shock. Now, this group of dogs who were experiencing inescapable shock, when they were after 24 hours when they were transferred to another chamber, now they could stop it. Earlier there was no escape, now they were placed in a chamber where they could press certain switch and stop the electric shock. They found most of these dog did not react and passively endured the shock, even though they could stop it, they passively endured it. This contrasted with control group of dogs that reacted vigorously and learned to stop the shock. On the other hand, the dogs were in the initial first phase, they could stop the electric shock. When they were put in the same chamber box, they immediately actively tried to find out how to escape that, and they jumped and that they made an exit. But on the other hand, who learned that in the first phase that there was no possible escape from this, they did not try also even in the new situation where it was possible to stop. So, from this model they said this dog has learned to become helpless. So, this was the kind of chamber where they were put in the second phase. So, they could easily jump from here to here. So, here there was an electric shock, but if they jump and come here, there is no electric shock. Even such simple barrier was given, they could easily jump. The experimental dog who experienced inescapable shock in the first phase, they did not even try to jump. On the other hand, who could control the shock in the first phase, they immediately jumped here. So, this basically past experiences, this passive dog had learned to become helpless as it had previously experienced that the action did not influence the shock. This led to the expectation of helplessness in new situations, resulting in motivational, cognitive and emotional deficits. This is known as learned helplessness phenomena. So, that is the whole concept of learned helplessness. Now, this learned helplessness, similar behavior can also be observed within human beings also. So, psychologists studying human problem quickly recognized some parallels between this learned helplessness of uncontrollable events in the laboratory experiment with some of the behaviors of human beings in the real life. This promoted research of learned helplessness in humans context also. For example, in one study, a researcher produced helplessness in people similar to how it was done with the animals by exposing them to uncontrollable event such as unsolvable problems instead of electric shock and observe the resulting deficits. Further studies also revealed more. So, similar studies were done with the humans, but here electric shock was not given, but given a situation where they could not solve, like some unsolvable problems were given to solve them. So, they tried and tried, they could not solve it because it was not possible to solve. So, they were in a situation like it is not possible to solve. So, complete helplessness was induced, and when similarly they were put in the newer situations where it is possible to solve, probably they did not even try to solve that. So, similar human context wise findings were also reported, where human beings also experience learned helplessness. Further studies also revealed more similarities between animals phenomena and the human laboratory results. So, many such studies also revealed that. So, these uncontrollable adverse events increase the likelihood of anxiety and depression, but prior exposure to controllable events could immunize people against learned helplessness. In case of human, obviously human beings not all the time experience only uncontrollable events, many times they also experience a lot of controllable events in their life. So, those past experiences of controllable events can also immunize people against learned helplessness. So, human beings, because so many things we experience and we can make lot of calculations, lot of thinking processes can be involved. So, learned helplessness can be more complex in case of human beings as compared to animals. So, this additionally demonstrating the subject that their responses could change outcomes, help reverse the helplessness of deficits. So, there are several aspects of human helplessness which differs from animal helplessness, like dog's helplessness. So, human being differs in certain contexts because human thought processes are different. So, humans have a unique ability to make meaning out of life events, while animals learn about controlling over events in literal terms. So, when animal learns, animal in a situation of learned helplessness, it only learns about, or his conditioning is only about that situation, and literally they think about that situation, only respond in that situation. For human being, they make lot of meaning out of it. They can think complex thought processes and can exaggerate things to so many other events associated with those events. So, those meaning making process is something very unique to human beings, which can make it much more complex in terms of expression. So, it is important not to misinterpret human behavior such as passive behavior, withdrawal behavior as a sign of helplessness. Many times human beings simply becomes passive not because of helplessness, but because of many other factors in their mind. Alternative forms of control, such as it could be belief in religious faith, which can help people feel less helpless in the face of trauma. So, sometimes people simply become passive in certain situation and they do not do anything actively, but they make lot of other complex thinking around it, where they simply think let us say some outside factor like God is controlling their event, they will make things right, or God will make things right. Now, here they are not completely losing the control, but giving it to some external factors. So, even though in this situation the person may become very passive, but it may not be typical case of helplessness. So, in human case they may make meaning out of a situation and involve in complex thought processes, which we do not see in animal conditioning. Another difference is vicarious helplessness, that humans can develop helpless behavior or deficits by merely observing others facing uncontrollable situation. Sometimes we learn to become helpless not because we have experienced it, but because by observing other people. That I see someone else has failed in certain tasks, it may instill sense of failure in me also, that I will not even try to do that, because I have learned that person also failed. Person X, Y, Z failed, so what is the point of trying myself? So, by observing others, one can also feel sense of helplessness or uncontrollability in a situation, which we do not see in animals. Last, another difference could be the group of people can exhibit helplessness after exposure to uncontrollable events. Group faced with unsolvable problem shows problem solving deficit. So, this human beings, in case of human beings, a whole group can experience helplessness, collective of people, when they as a collectively fail in something, which we do not see in animals. Animals mostly it is an individual thing. So, that is why it shows that in the case of human being, the concept of learned helplessness could be much more complex and may include lot of thought processes, which we do not see in animals. Now, so from this concept that there is a difference in the thought processes in the case of learned helplessness between animals and humans, led to the attributional reformulation of learned helplessness, and a new concept came to explain human situation, which is called as an explanatory style. How do you explain a situation? That is more, how do you find the causes of certain behavior or outcomes that can explain human situation in a much better way. So, basically it evolved from the learned helplessness paradigm, and explanatory style seems to be much more befitting or fit in the context of human explanation. So, in an effort to resolve discrepancies in the helplessness model, Abramson and colleague integrated it with that attributional theory. So, this learned helplessness theory was kind of modified using attributional reformulation. Attribution basically means how human beings try to find the causes of behavior. So, they reinterpreted helplessness, learned helplessness in the human context using attributional reformulation, and they called it as an explanatory style concept or theory. So, they suggested that people interpret uncontrollable bad events by asking why they happened and their causal attribution, what is the cause behind it, to determine the subsequent helplessness. So, in the case of human beings, as we have seen, which does not happen in animals, that uncontrollable, when we face an uncontrollable event, we try to find out why this is happening. We try to interpret the situation and try to find the causes behind it. So, that is called attribution. Attribution is associated with explanatory style or finding the causes. So, this concept of explanatory style then is much more became more important in finding or explaining helplessness in the human context. So, this attribution or finding causes could be based on many factors in the human context. So, one is one can attribute the cause of a behavior or an outcome as stable cause. Stable cause, that means something that is going to last for a long time. So, the cause is very stable. Then let us say if one attributes the cause of a failure or a situation where there is an uncontrollable situation, you could not control the situation, then the human beings try to find the cause behind it. Why I failed in a situation? What led to the failure of me in a situation? Then they try to find the causes. Now, what is the nature of this cause? Whether this cause is stable. If it is a stable cause, that means it is going to last for a long time. For example, if you think the cause of your failure is because of your lack of ability, now this is a stable cause. Now, abilities is something that you cannot change overnight. You have a certain ability, and this ability can obviously you can modify and improve it, but it is not an easy thing to do. People have different abilities. Some people have higher abilities, some people have lower abilities, and so on. So, if you think you failed because of lack of ability in a particular situation, then it is a stable attribution. Then your sense of helplessness will be more long lasting, because you think I do not have ability to succeed. That means it will lead to much more long lasting helplessness. One can also think about a cause as unstable cause. When you think some cause as unstable, that means you will think the cause is for very short time only, it will remove, it will be a temporary thing. So, let us say you think the cause of your failure was, let us say, lack of hard work. Now, this is an unstable factor, hard work. Why unstable? Because this can be changed very easily. I could not succeed because I should have put more effort. From my side, the hard work was less, so I failed. So, it is a temporary thing. Next time when I put more effort, I am going to succeed. So, this hard work is an unstable thing. So, if you explain yourself cause of failure as lack of hard work, then your helplessness will be very for short time only, because you think I can change it, because this can be changed, but ability is something that cannot be changed so easily. So, that will lead to more helplessness. One can also attribute the cause as global cause. Global cause means it is going to affect most of the things of my life. Okay? So, helplessness affects various situations of life. So, you failed in a particular situation, but or you find a cause of that failure as, let us say, something lack of ability or something lack of intelligence or something like that. But then you say this lack of intelligence is going to make you failure in many things in your life. Then it becomes a global cause. So, you are making it almost one failure leads to failure in so many other dimensions of life, you are connecting that. So, then cause is very global factor. So, you think lack of intelligence is causing or lack of ability is causing me failure in many aspects of your life. So, that means this cause is a global factor, that means it is influence many things. So, global factors affects many dimensions of your life, and so the helplessness will become much more global, or its impact will be in many situations, many aspects of your life. When the cause is specific, that means it is only related to this situation. So, I failed in this particular case because I was not prepared for this particular interview or this particular examination, something like that. It is not that ball, because it was very only related to this situation only. It is not going to influence other aspect of my life. So, next time maybe I can change this situation, but this is only related to this particular XYZ situation. So, you are not finding this cause is, you are not connecting with other aspects of your life. So, I failed in an interview, that means it is only interview, not other aspect of my life. I am not a failure in other aspect of life. So, only specific causes you are finding. Causes can be internal, which we kind of discussed in internal external locus of control. When you think a cause is internal, that means you are finding causes only within you. So, your self esteem will drop, you are more likely to experience helplessness and so on. When you say the reason was within me, so you are more likely to be influenced by that. When you say the reason is more typically, let us say, lack of intelligence or some kind of thing, these are all internal factors. I failed because I do not have ability to face those situations, whatever it is. Or the situation or cause could be external cause, it is not my fault, someone else was creating obstacle. So, then it may not influence your self esteem much, because you think you are not the reason, something else is the reason, or you simply had a bad luck or something like that. So, what kind of causes you find in the situation or leading to the outcomes of a situation or success or failure, it will influence your behavior in so many diverse ways, depending on what is your explanation of that behavior, explanation of certain outcomes of your behavior. So, all these factors can come into play when human beings comes into the picture. So, all these possibilities are there. So, from this we can talk about explanatory style. So, psychologists use this term explanatory style to describe the tendencies of some individual to behave habitually with certain type of explanation for event. So, human beings develop certain tendencies or fixed patterns of explanations of events in their life. When events happens, successes happens, failures happens, people have a tendency to explain in a certain fashion, certain particular style. So, that is called explanatory style. So, what is your explanatory style will determine your emotional outcomes, your future motivation, future effort that you put in, everything will be determined by your explanatory style. How do you explain the cause of particular action in your behavior or some particular outcomes of events in your life, particular outcomes of your actions in your life? What is your explanatory style? How do you explain it using all these factors that we discussed? So, this explanation can be categorized into this internal, external, stable, unstable, global, specific that we all discussed. So, explanation could be based on whether internal factors you are explaining using internal factors or external factors, or where you are trying to find the causes of outcome as stable, unstable or global specific. So, these are the possibilities, three possible ways in which we can explain things that happens in our life. So, when we explain using internal, external, so this dimension addresses whether attribute the causes to within themselves or outside, as we have already discussed. For example, a poor grade on a paper might be attributed internally, lack of skills or lack of ability, or externally, or the professor was not good. So, he was very harsh. So, he gave me a bad grade. So, this could be one explanation. So, this is an external explanation, or when you say I got bad grade because I lack ability. So, that could be an internal explanation, or I did not work hard, that could be also an internal explanation. People who frequently use internal explanation are more likely to blame themselves for negative events, even for those beyond their control. Stable, unstable, we have already discussed, but just to kind of summarize again, it basically talks about the permanence of the cause, to what extent this cause will remain. If it remains for a long time, then it is a stable factor. If it remains for a short term, then it is an unstable cause. An unstable cause is temporary, such as I am not able to write well because of distraction. When you say I am not able to write this assignment properly because lot of distraction are there in my surroundings. So, this is an unstable, it is a temporary thing. This distraction will not remain permanently in your case. So, you can go to some other place for remove distraction. So, it is unstable factors, while stable cause is more permanent, like perceived I lack writing skill. When you say I do not have writing skill, so I am not able to write properly, it is a more stable cause. So, that means wherever you go, you cannot change your ability immediately. So, you will not be able to write. So, that is like a stable cause. Global specific, this talks about to how many areas it affects the cause affects to how many areas. The more it affects, the more global it is. Less it affects, it is more specific it is. For instance, believing one cannot write at all is a global explanation. So, when you are writing an assignment and you cannot write, and you simply say I cannot write anything. So, you are making it a global explanation. You are doing an assignment of a particular subject and you are then making it a global, like I cannot write well anything. So, that means that is a global explanation, implying poor performance in writing task, while thinking one struggling only on a particular paper is a specific explanation. When you say I am not able to write properly this particular subject, assignment of this subject, then it is a specific explanation. So, individual may develop consistent explanations. A lot of people have a consistent patterns of finding causes, similar causes you will find all the time. So, then it becomes a kind of personality trait kind of stuff, habitually using certain types of explanation. So, this explanation can be of two broad categories again, when we kind of factor in those causes or explanations. One is pessimistic style and one is optimistic style of explanation. So, explanatory style features stable, global and internal external explanation for bad event is termed as pessimistic, while opposite style is called, when for bad event you say it is unstable, specific, and external explanation for bad event is termed as optimistic. So, who are called pessimistic and who are called optimistic when something bad happens? So, this is kind of given more specifically. So, for bad events or negative events or failures, when you attribute causes or try to find causes of such failures or bad events, as internal factor is causing failure, stable cause is the cause of failure, global cause you connect with internal, stable and global factors in the causes of bad events, then you have a pessimistic explanatory style. So, when you, for example, so individual with a pessimistic explanatory style all the time attribute negative events to their internal personal factors. So, they believe the cause of these events lies within themselves, their abilities, their personalities and inherent flaws. So, they will say I failed in this particular task because I do not have abilities. So, it is an internal factors, that is one factors. So, it is, so they are more likely to become pessimistic because they think the cause is within me, I am the one who is responsible for it. And then stable factors, not just internal will not work, many time internal factor will not influence much, but when you make it a stable factor. For example, I failed because of lack of ability. So, ability is internal factor as well as it is a stable factor, you cannot change it. So, you are more likely to become pessimistic. People become optimistic when they think I can make changes in my life or causes can be changed, then I can get success next time. But when you think I cannot get success in the next time simply because I cannot change the cause because it is a stable cause. So, if I think you do not have abilities, how do you change abilities then? It is very difficult. So, then it is a stable explanation, and for this person they are more likely to become pessimistic, optimism is less likely to happen here. And the third factor, if you explain bad events to global factors, link it to the global factors. This style involves attributing negative events to global factors, where you say affecting many aspects of your lives. For example, if they fail in a test, they might think they are incompetent in all areas of life. So, they just failed in one thing in their life, but they will say every aspect of life they are failures. So, they are making it a global cause. So, such kind of attribution of causes to internal, stable and global factors for bad events, negative events is called pessimistic explanatory style. So, some people are with pessimistic explanatory style, they will all the time more likely to experience the negative emotions and so on, because they are more likely to explain like this as a pattern, it becomes a pattern within themselves. So, then it becomes a kind of trait. Optimistic explanatory style is just opposite to that. When the outcomes of bad events or failures, you connect or link it with the external factors. So, optimistic individual on the other hand attribute negative events to external situational factors. Most of the time they will see that they might have failed more likely to because certain factors in circumstances or certain rather than personal inadequacies. So, that leads to more optimism, but not just external factor itself cannot make you optimistic, but what kind of factors you are finding causes, it is an unstable factor. So, they view negative events as temporary and unstable, believing that the situation can be changed or improved later on. So, that instability is very important in terms of optimistic explanatory style, and then they all the time look factors only in the situation, they do not make it global like every aspect of life. So, optimistic individuals tend to see negative events as only specific to this particular situation and not to other aspect of life. Then you are more likely to be optimistic and try to change and take action and make changes in life. So, people sometimes consistently develop certain style of explanation. Some people are more pessimistic explanatory style they use, some people use more optimistic explanatory style. So, these are like some further examples given here, how causal events for good events and bad events one can do. For people with optimistic style, for bad events they use external, it is not me, unstable, it is just a temporary setback, specific, it is just this one situation. So, this is how for bad events people with optimistic style they use this kind of explanations, and for good events they see it stable, I can do it again, global, life is good. So, they make it like more global in the good cases. So, they will find it connect these good things with many other aspects of life. So, for good events probably they do just opposite. Similarly, for pessimistic style they connect bad events to internal factors, it is me, stable, it is not going to last, global, it is going to undermine everything I do, and external, it happened to me. So, for good events they use unstable. So, from here actually this is the difference here. So, for good events mostly they see it internal, stable, global by the optimistic people with optimistic styles. For pessimistic styles, good event they find the causes as the external, it happened to me, they do not find causes within themselves. For good event they see unstable factors as the cause, it is one time thing, and for good events they see more specific things like it is just one situation. So, they find some reason, they find out the reasons in such a way that for bad events they become depressed and for good events they do not see it that good. So, this is how the explanation works and it influences one's emotions. So, this explanatory style also can be find out what is the explanatory style of a person using a certain questionnaire called attributional style questionnaire ASQ, which was developed by Peterson and colleagues in 1982. So, this is a self report questionnaire, one can assess oneself as well as other individuals what is their explanatory style, and so those measurement questionnaires are available. So, this questionnaire measures, so what is your explanatory style for bad events and good events, for both the cases, how do you explain things. So, this explanatory style based on attribution of bad events typically shows stronger correlation with the outcomes. So, for bad events the explanations found to be in the research much more strongly correlated with the outcomes as compared to good events. People also use like content analysis, another procedure called CAVE, content analysis of verbatim explanation. CAVE allows researcher to analyze written or spoken explanation for event. So, one can also ask people to write about the what caused certain events in their life, whether bad events and good events, and based on that some the scoring can be done from what they have written, that is called content analysis, and one can also find the patterns of their explanation based on the whatever they write also. So, questionnaire can be used, some content analysis of the written material can also be used to find out the explanatory style. So, explanatory style when it becomes a personality, obviously it is not so easy to change, but a lot of procedure can be used to change explanatory style of people. Most of this cognitive therapy that people use for treatment of patients and so on, where they try to change thought processes, can be used effectively to change explanatory style of people when they understand that their explanation or their thought processes are the cause behind the psychological problems and depression and so on. Slowly the more healthy thoughts can be replaced with. So, cognitive therapy does that, they basically found to be effectively alter individual explanatory style from pessimistic to optimistic, which can reduce the symptoms of depression in so many patients. Additionally, cognitive behavior interventions focusing on problem solving skills can lead to individuals to interpret events more optimistically. So, most of these cognitive behavior therapies and techniques can be used to change thought processes, explanatory styles, and which can also change the moment thought processes or patterns are changed, emotions also changes. Pessimistic explanatory style leads to more negative emotions, optimistic explanatory style leads to more positive emotions. So, a lot of these therapies actually aims at that, most of these cognitive behavior therapies. So, those explanatory style can be changed, but obviously when it becomes a pattern it is not so easy, it may take time, but there are therapies and techniques that can be used. So, with this I stop here. So, these are some of the mini theories related to cognitive perspective of personality, which explains how cognitive factors can be used to explain human personalities. So, with this I stop here, we will start another module in the next lecture. Thank you.